to an episode of Rediscovered Movies. I'm your host, Nomfanelo Malloy. So, the film that I will be covering today is Rye Lane. So, Rye Lane is a 2023 British romantic comedy film. It is directed by Raine Allen Miller, who's known for directing short films such as Christmas to the Max and Jerk. So, this marks her feature directorial debut. The film is written by Nathan Byron, who's known for Blood's TV series, and Tom Melia, who's known for Hollyoaks TV series. The film stars David Jonsson, Vivian Oparah, and Simon Manyonda. So here's a synopsis. Following two youngsters reeling from bad breakups who connect over a particularly eventful day in South London. So the film premiered at the Sundance Film Festival on January 23rd, 2023. It was released in theaters in the UK on March 17th, 2023. It was released on Disney Plus on March 31st. In terms of box office, it made over $1.5 million in the UK. In regards to critical reception, it has a 3.9 rating on Letterboxd. It was nominated for two BAFTA awards, including Outstanding British Film. And at the time of this recording, it is streaming on Disney Plus. So check your local provider. Let's get into first discovery. So I remember before the film came out, I saw people were discussing this film online, through film Twitter and all that stuff. A lot of people were praising the movie. So when I first saw the trailer online, I'm like, oh, this looks interesting. But I was quite skeptical because it is a rom com, and I figured that it would have used the typical tropes from the genre. So as time went by, like after the movie came out on Disney Plus, so where I am in Canada, it did not get a theatrical release. It went straight to streaming here. So I saw after the film came out, a lot of people were praising it on Twitter. So I finally got the chance to watch it. It must have been within a few months after the film came out on Disney Plus when I eventually saw it. Uh, Interesting, yeah, that I saw this movie just before I canceled my Disney Plus subscription, and I had to say, yeah, first impression, I quite dug this movie a lot. And yes, it does have the cliches, but I wouldn't say it's very apparent with those cliches. But I would say it's worthwhile. Was very delightful. I thought the performances from the cast are solid. The leads had amazing chemistry, and I thought the director did an amazing job with this movie. Like when it came down to the aesthetic choices and also to the creative choices in regards to the narrative. And then I rewatched the movie again for this podcast on Disney Plus because I got a 3 month trial for the platform with ads. And yeah, I would say it still holds up, and my thoughts have not changed dramatically since then. So let's get into the highlights. So I loved how I've seen a fair share of movies before that have take place in London or in the UK. And what I appreciate about this movie is that we get to see a different side of London. I do have a fun fact about where the film was shot. I'll talk about that in the trivia section. But it was just nice to see um, a side of London that's, I wouldn't say it's not necessarily in the city, but focus more on the neighborhood side of London, and we get to hear more of the locals as the characters the main characters spend their time like throughout the movie as they are making their way around the area. So that was appreciated. Also, too, I thought it was interesting that let's talk about the lead characters. So Dom is quite the emotional character because how he's presented. I wouldn't say he is like the nerdy type, but he's quite reserved, and I felt kind of sorry for him because he throughout this movie he's still trying to deal with the breakup between him and his ex girlfriend Gia, who slept with his best friend Eric, unfortunately, and he found and the way he found about it was quite tragic. And um, it's funny that like when um, we're introduced to his character in the opening scene, they show like the different bathroom stalls like with an overhead tracking shot where like all the other stalls like have like their own like personality, which is interesting like for a public bathroom to have that. But then when it came down to Dom stall, like it was quite dull and dab. So I guess maybe that's to show like how like the character is in that current state. But yeah, I guess as the lead, I guess it was nice to see like a male character, the leading character, not to be this like overtly like confident person, but with like Dom, as the events progress, we do get to see him rebuild his confidence the more time he spends with Yas. And Yas, she is quite the firecracker as the co-lead of this movie. Now she is the opposite of Dom, where she, is very outgoing, very energetic. Her clothes are very loud, which fits because she is a fashion designer. She is wearing like the yellow metallic jacket with the pink fuzzy purse, and I don't know if it was a scarf or a blouse with the cheetah print, but yeah, clearly like she has a very outgoing personality, and really liked how she was very spontaneous when it came to her actions, particularly when she decides to surprise Dom as he is having conversation with Gia and Eric at the restaurant, which I'll get into that scene in a bit. But yeah, Yas was quite the character in this movie, and I think her and Dom, even though they are like opposites, but in a way they somehow connect. Probably because they're both dealing with breakups, but I guess here it shows that opposites attract. And a highlight that I also enjoyed is the way that the flashback scenes are presented. So in a way, like it kind of like borrows from the magical realism where here like we have like as the characters are telling their story, like they are kind of like telling it as the event is showcased in front of them. So, an example, like when Dom is telling Yas about how he learned about his girlfriend Gia cheating on him, like he and Yas, I guess, are together as in front of him. We see how like Dom was acting and reacting as he learned about that information in real time. So I thought that was a cool way to present those scenes. It's in a way it's kind of like dreamlike or like in surreal in ways, and I do respect that creative choice. And I thought the music, I really enjoyed the music. So Quest, I believe, yeah, did the score for this music. Um, I would say, like, in a way, it borrows from. There's a bit of like soul music mixed with probably like dance and EDM. So I would say, yeah, that will be the ideal sound of this movie in regards to the score. I would say for me, the one that stood out was when Dom and Yas were breaking up, even though they weren't a couple. But during that scene when they decide to go their separate ways, and then the montage sequence followed afterwards. So I really enjoyed that piece of music. So I would say kudos to Quest on that. In regards to scenes, let's talk about the restaurant scene. So yeah, so clearly at this point, Dom still can't get over his ex girlfriend cheating on him, and I do wonder though, the fact that she decided on to cheat with Dom's best friend Eric is the choice. And I also wonder though, like how Eric and Dom are best friends, but that could be like a conversation on itself. But yeah, like it just shows that with Eric, is not the brightest in terms of how he is like reacting and acting in that scene. And it was funny that Yash just shows up out of nowhere to pretend to be Dom's girlfriend, which I did kind of like the scene because it just show yeah like to essentially to have Dom like kind of get his revenge on Gia, because he does admit afterwards that he wanted to do something like that for quite some time but just didn't have the courage to do so. And yeah, like like Eric, he kind of got too excited at times when he should not be. So I thought, yeah, he's funny. And when Dom and Yaz make up this story on how they met during karaoke night was hilarious. In a way though, it kind of like hints at what's to come for them as they do karaoke night later in the movie, which I'll get into. But I thought, yeah, with that whole sequence when Dom is, trying to confront Gia, but then Yas kind of like saves the day. I thought that's a very entertaining sequence. I would say it's one of the highlights for me. Another scene that I enjoyed. Yeah, let's talk about the karaoke scene. So essentially, Dom and Yas are kind of like forced to perform "Shoop" by Salt and Pepper. It's a classic song, and so Dom kind of starts off solo, and how he decides to go about it. It reminded me of, if you guys watch Saturday Night Live, the character Shirani that Andy Samberg played. It kind of reminded me of that character where, like, he's very shy, like speaks very low that no one hears him. It's yeah, like with those skits that he did with Rihanna back in the day. That that kind of like reminded me of how Dom was performing the song during that scene, and yes, and as always, Yas, like she saved the day as they decided to duet, and then the audience enjoyed it. So I thought, yeah, that was an entertaining sequence. Also, too, the when at the beginning during the first act at the art gallery, there's a lot of mouths in that art gallery, which kind of makes me question Nathan's, choices in regards to what he decides to present there. It kind of makes me wonder, like, does Nathan have a fetish? Because at the beginning, like in his this art piece display, whatever you call it, it has a lot of close up of mouths, particularly like the inside of a mouth or open mouth. And then towards the end of the movie has another art gallery display, but this time it's of butts. So it kind of just makes me question, does Nathan have a fetish for anatomies of the human body? Who knows? Who knows? Because it's weird, obviously, but in a way, it's kind of interesting. Not because of the choice to show that, but maybe it's just how they are framed as art pieces. But hey, I guess Nathan as an artist, he gets to do what he does here in this movie. And lastly, a scene that I enjoyed was when Dom and Yaz visit the tortilla shop, Guactuality. Love Guactuality. I hope I'm saying that right. Because clearly it's a nod to the one of the classic rom coms, British rom coms, Love Actually, and Colin Firth, who was in Love Actually, he cameoed as the tortilla chef. Maybe he's also Orner too. But I thought, yeah, that was a nice scene to watch. Now let's get into the lowlights. So I don't have too many to share for this section. As I mentioned, yeah, like it does. This movie does use the genre convention. So I mean, it was quite apparent that, of course, Dom and Yas were going to separate, and then eventually they reunite and all that stuff. So yeah, like I didn't really mind it because I felt like it was expected. But maybe there could have been some more reinvention in regards to those cliches, but for me personally, I did not mind it. But I'm sure for some might mind those choices, so I just wanted to share that. But yeah, as a low light I had is that Yas mentions that a deal breaker that she has is when people don't wave towards others at boats. Because she says that it was a red flag when her ex boyfriend Jules refused to wave at the people, at the tourists specifically, because she claims that it's equivalent to having no joy. So I don't really get why that's a deal breaker. I mean, unless if, let's say, with Jules was like a piece of work essentially, where you just mean to other people for no reason, maybe I would kind of get that choice, but really I don't get why that's such a huge deal breaker. But I guess Yas needs to have something as a deal breaker. And as the last note I had is that, as I mentioned at the beginning, I do appreciate the way things are shot and framed and all that stuff. And a choice that I did not really agree with was the choice to use fishbowl lenses. And those are used when mainly when the characters are moving. So to be clear, I do not mind fishbowl lenses, but I mean, as long as they have a purpose to it. But I just felt like here in this movie, there were too many uses of that camera angle. So I felt for me they could have been limited or just remove them completely. All right, let's get into trivia. So here are some fun facts. So the principal of photography was underway in London in April 2021 when it was revealed that Nathan Byron had written his first feature film with Tom Melia under the working title Vibes and Stuff. Yvonne Isimem Ibazibo of DJ Films, I hope I said that right, and Damian Jones of Turnover Films produced the film with assistance and funding from BBC Film. BFI, which is the British Film Institute, and Searchlight Pictures. Also to Jones sent Raine Allen Miller an invitation to direct a film as suggested by Eva Yates, a BBC Films executive producer who knew Allen Miller through her 2018 short film Jerk. After boarding the project, Allen Miller helped to develop the script with Byron, Melia, and script editor and executive producer Sophie Mayer. Other executive producers include Rose Garnett, Kristen Irving, Paul Grindy, and Charles Moore. And then, last fun fact, the film was originally going to be set in Camden, North London, before Alan Miller changed locations to Brixton and Peckham. Filming locations included the restaurant Cole Rooms, Rye Lane Market, the grocery store Nor Cash and Carry in Brixton Village, the chicken shop Morley's, the Italian restaurant Two Giardino, Brockwell Park, and Peckham Plex. Yeah, interesting. Because I don't know much about London locale as someone that lives in Canada, but as I said at the beginning, I appreciated the choice of the setting in this movie. In a way, like it acts as its own character in this movie. So, lastly, should this movie be rediscovered? And I say absolutely yes. It's a delightful rom com. I would say if you love rom coms, you'll love this movie. And the cast did an amazing job with this movie. I think the creative choices for the most part works. And yeah, I would say please check out this movie if you haven't already. So that pretty much concludes this episode of the podcast. So you can find me on Instagram, X, YouTube, and Linktree at Nomfanelo. You can find the podcast on Instagram, X, YouTube, and Linktree at RD Movies Pod. You could visit buymeacoffee.com/RD Movies Pod to donate. On Spotify app, you can answer the featured poll, rate the podcast, and leave a comment. On Apple Podcasts, you can leave a review and rate the podcast. And you can submit questions, comments, and suggestions by email, which is rediscoveredmovies@gmail.com, to be featured on the after show, which will air after the season finale. All right, so I want to say thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to catch you on the next one.